Aloha and welcome to Wind in Her Hair. I'm Anna, your host. And today I have a very interesting guest. Not this guy, Peter McLaughlin. He's a hypnotist and relationship coach. And I have so many questions I'll dive into with you, Peter, because I grew up thinking that you don't go anywhere near it as a Christian and hypnosis is just weird. So why don't you clarify that for all of us?
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is just define what it is, because everyone, you and I and all of your listeners have heard that word hypnosis, the word hypnotize, the word mesmerize our whole
Mhm.
lives, primarily in an entertainment context. So the lyrics to popular songs, comic books, novels, movies, TV shows, even newscasters throw around those words. And then there's the Las Vegas stage shows. And it implies that one person, the hypnotist, is controlling the other person, the subject, who's in a catatonic sleep-like state. They do whatever they're told and they don't remember anything. And the truth is that every one of us goes in and out of a hypnotic state all the time anyway, without a hypnotist present. If you're driving your car and you're thinking about something that's going on in your life and you pull into your driveway and you can't remember driving the last 15 or 20 minutes, that's because you're in hypnosis. When you're in love and time goes like this, you're in hypnosis. When you're watching a movie and it feels like that was 2 hours, it felt like it was 20 minutes. That's also hypnosis, which is a focused state of concentration. That's basically what it is. So when people understand that, they are able to go, oh, okay, I get that. That's understandable. Now, you can use that state to improve your life. You can use that state to entertain people, but it's
Hmm.
not used as a way of controlling people.
Hmm.
And what I also say for anybody who's concerned about this, please don't watch television, because you are, by definition, when you watch television or a movie, in a hypnotic state. This is why somebody can call your name and you don't answer them right away. And large corporations, as everyone knows, pours tens or hundreds of billions of dollars into advertising. And the weird thing about our mind is we think, oh, well, yeah, that works on other people, but it doesn't work on me. They wouldn't spend all this money if it didn't work. And people are in a hypnotic state when they're watching TV, and all the principles of persuasion are utilized to get people to buy things that maybe they
Hmm.
otherwise wouldn't buy. So we have to put this into context. And if I could, I'd like to give you one more anecdote that came up on Saturday. So you were talking about Christians
Hmm.
and about hypnosis. And I just want to give you this anecdote that occurred on Saturday. And the client that came in on Saturday is a physician. He's an MD. And I've been working with him for, I don't know, probably about 9 months or so. And we were able to resolve the issues that he came to see me for. And he said, when he walked in, he said, I feel like I have the closest, most personal relationship with Jesus I've ever had in my life. He said, I grew up going to church, but it all just was just sitting there. They were words. I would say the words back, and that's what it was. And now I feel like I have this really intense, powerful relationship with Jesus through doing this work. And I said to him, why would it be that if something that God gave you, which is your ability to go into that state, which is, I demonstrated before, it happens when you're driving. Why would this be a bad thing if you become closer to Christ? How could that possibly be
Hmm.
considered to be a bad thing? And I would posit that hypnosis is basically a tool. It's like a gun. People say guns are bad. I don't think so. I think the people that use them sometimes for a bad purpose. So that's what I'd like people to consider, along with everything else that we just discussed.
Hmm.
Okay. Hypnosis is known as a state of hyper learning. Children are in hypnosis naturally all the time, 24/7, until they're between the ages of 7 and 9 years old. Children are like sponges. It's because they're in a state of hyper learning, also known as hypnosis.
Hmm.
So think about the programming that you have, the programming that I have. Most of it is really good. It runs your life. But some of it takes you down paths and in directions that are painful and that produce the same negative results over and over again. That's because there's some kind of programming in there, maybe from your childhood, that
Hmm.
ideally would be changed or shifted so that you don't have to have the same painful patterns returning over and over again.
So hypnosis helps with this.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Because think of a computer and the software that's behind it that run the functions of the computer.
Hmm.
If you want to change the functions of the computer, changing the hardware is not going to do it. You've got to reprogram it.
Hmm.
So hypnosis is almost like code or an opening that allows you to change the programming.
It's interesting too that science didn't know that you could rewire the brain up until recently. Do you know about Caroline Leaf, the
Well, but I know about neuroplasticity.
Okay. I first came across it through her. She's from South Africa. And when I started to study her work, I thought this is so amazing that I can change how I function and how I do things. And I was a very impatient, angry mom back in the day, especially I was married to an alcoholic, and that was very frustrating. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, it's like Groundhog Day. I'm trying to conquer my weaknesses. I'm trying to do better and do differently. And I just couldn't figure it out because I didn't understand how to rewire the brain.
Yes,
So I should have.
exactly.
How did you get into hypnotherapy?
In 2003, I was volunteering to be a firefighter and EMT in my town in Connecticut. They made me take an extensive physical. At the end of the first day of the physical, the doctor said, "Wow, you're in really good shape." I was 41 at the time. And come back and give blood. I came back, I gave blood, and then all these alarm bells went off. I got all these calls and messages and texts on my phone. And when I got a hold of somebody, they kind of breathlessly said to me, "We think that you have Lyme disease and a chronic form of leukemia." And so when I asked them how long I had to live, they said maybe 10 years. That was 23 years ago. And the more I kind of looked into this, the more I was drawn into the power of the mind over the body. And I thought, okay, my best chance of surviving longer than 10 years was to get control of my mind.
Mhm.
And that's ultimately what led me to wanting to be trained as a hypnotherapist. And then as I began to do the work, I began to understand the power of the spirit over the mind.
Mm,
And so the kind of practice I have now is much more of a spiritually oriented
mhm,
hypnosis. And those words, I think, rarely go together. But I do think that everything happens, for example, for a reason. And I
mhm,
think that there is a spirit world, there's a spirit realm that our physical bodies are just a temporary housing for our soul.
mhm. Did you grow up Christian?
Mhm. Yeah. So I was baptized as a Catholic. My parents got divorced when I was 5. So I was raised as a Catholic and
Mhm.
as a Methodist, depending on whether I was with my father's family or I was with my mother. Can I
Go
say
ahead.
something else? That
Yes.
like my clients that I
Mhm,
mentioned, the two that just happened recently on Friday and Saturday,
mhm,
I believe that this work has actually deepened my faith too. That
mhm,
before it felt more like just the way I was raised. I went to mass or I went to a Methodist service and I sang the hymns and I know the Lord's Prayer and I had a conceptual feeling of being Christian. And now I feel like I have a visceral, heart-based feeling of being a Christian and a follower of Christ through doing this work. You talked about being an angry mom. I was an
mhm,
angry dad when my kids were little. And after
mhm,
I did the training, because we had to also be in the client role with one of the instructors to be our teacher, our hypnotherapist, all of the anger was gone. And I've come to believe that we suffer in our culture not only from environmental toxins, but we also suffer from emotional toxins. And because the mind
mhm,
and the body are connected, you could be walking around with something that happened to you earlier in your life that's actually also affecting your body in some way.
mhm. There's that book out there that says your body remembers a score. And a lot of
Yeah,
people don't realize that when you don't process, a lot of people stuff down the emotions and the painful feelings, right?
totally.
And that's the worst thing to do because it's not going to go away. It's just going to kind of fester and rot until it exposes itself sometime at some point. And that's why I try to teach my children now to embrace whatever you're feeling and name it and own it and feel it and like process it and then let it go. Is that kind of like what? hypnosis is like feeling it?
Well, so again, it's a tool,
Mhm, mhm,
and you can use that tool for a variety of purposes.
mm,
The way I use it is one of the ways is to help people reprocess an old trauma.
mhm,
Because I've discovered everything comes down to your autonomic, which just means automatic, your autonomic nervous system. When you feel frightened or you feel angry, all it means is that your autonomic nervous system has moved into the fight or flight mode. And it only has two options: fight or flight, rest and digest. That's it. So anything that's causing you trouble is activating or triggering that fight or flight response in your autonomic nervous system. And that was created at a moment in time in the past. And so if you are able to bring somebody in a way that the subconscious mind believes is almost kind of like real, even though the conscious mind knows it's not real, I'm not back there, and then you can change it, you can heal it in the mind, then anytime that person's triggered in the future, the body's not going to respond with a fight or flight response. It's going to remain calm. And when that
mhm,
happens, the anger goes away.
mhm.
They're able to keep present, fully present, with the prefrontal cortex online instead of that going dark and then the lizard brain activating because it thinks that you're under immediate attack. That's literally what's happening when we move into a fight or flight response. Even if your kids make you angry and you consciously know there's not anything they could do to harm you, your body doesn't understand that because somewhere in your mind you are perceiving a mortal threat. And
Ooh,
once
yes. Yeah.
once that perception has been shifted because you healed the past, then you don't move into that place. And the other thing I should mention is that the subconscious mind has no concept of time. Everything is now. And
Mhm,
that's why when you're in love and you're sitting there with your beloved and you're sipping wine in this beautiful place and the sun's going down, you're like, what time is it? You're like, we've been here 4 hours?
mhm.
Because when you're in that state of limerence, you're almost always in a hypnotic state.
When you were talking about being triggered, I realized that I became easily angered because my thing was when I felt disrespected, I would feel angered. And I realized looking back at the relationships in my life, the men that I attracted and kept in my life, they were very disrespectful towards me, the way that they treated me, including my ex husband. And so that when my children disrespected me, it might be just something that's little, but to me, it's a big deal. And it would trigger something in me that's not flight, but fight mode. And so now looking back, if I was able to reprogram that disrespect piece, then I wouldn't have reacted that way to such little things.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these programs are all created at a moment in time, and they're created as the result of a trauma.
Mhm,
In other words, there was a period of time where you didn't have that dynamic going,
mhm,
and then something happened to you, and your mind took on a belief. And we should define a belief. A belief is an idea and an emotion that get married.
mhm.
And the idea part of the belief doesn't have to be true. It can be false. It often is. But you know that you've activated it when you feel the emotion that comes up with it. And there's another important piece of information here too, which is, and it's ancient wisdom. It's called the law of correspondence. And part of this is in the Bible, as above, so below. The second part of that law of correspondence is as within, so without. So if
Mm.
you're experiencing disrespect over and over again on the outside, what the law of correspondence states is that you've got some kind of disrespect for yourself going on.
Mhm.
And when that gets healed, then the same law works in your favor. The respect I have for myself now starts showing up on the outside,
Yes. Oh my gosh, that I love that.
which transforms any of us from a victim
Mhm.
into a creator of our own reality. There's a really easy catchphrase to remember this, which is if you spot it, you got it.
If you spot it in other people.
If you
Mhm,
spot it, you got it. And again, this changes our our perspective when you recognize this and you embrace it, from being a victim of
Mhm.
circumstance to being, hey, wait a minute, if I partially created that, then I can create something different. I don't
Mhm.
have to wait for them to change for me to be happy.
Mhm. And this is just a side tangent, but something I learned, especially from Mel Robbins, is the whole let them theory, which really has helped me, especially with my teenage children. And realizing just because they have an attitude with me, it doesn't really have anything to do with me.
No,
And just be able to let that go and not take it personally. And that's a work that has to be done on a daily basis.
there's
Okay.
another phrase I remember from, I can't remember who coined it, but I find this useful too. And that is, what you think about me is
Mhm.
none of my business.
I love that.
Great.
Yeah. What you think about me is none of my business.
And it's hard to practice these things. I'm sure you would
Mhm.
agree with that. But these are sort of, I don't know if you would call them rules or guidelines or something for life, that if you follow them, it works really, really well. Have you ever heard about the book, The Four Agreements?
Mhm.
It's
I've
so
read that, yes. Yeah.
one of the agreements is take nothing personally,
Mhm.
which is similar to what you think about me is none of my business.
Okay, I have a question for you. You have a sentence on your website that says, "What you've buried is still shaping your life." And we kind of touched on this a few moments ago. Most people think they've moved on from their past. How do they know they actually haven't?
Okay, so your body is a feedback mechanism.
Mhm.
The way you know if you're happy is you feel it in your body.
Mhm.
You know if you're attracted to someone, the way you know if you're frightened, it's all being fed back through your body. So you would know if something from your past is activating you in part by something keeps coming up.
Mhm.
Like the example that you were giving, like if you're a parent and your kids are annoying you in the same way over and over and over again, it's just triggering something from your past that your
Mhm.
subconscious mind is saying, oh, that's just like this other thing, and that was dangerous, so this must be dangerous, even if it's not.
Mhm.
That's how you would know. There are other tools and mechanisms to find it more directly, but that's the broad answer to your question.
So they haven't moved on from that thing because it's
No,
still affecting them physically and it still
right,
pops up. It's like asking to be dealt with.
yes, precisely. And the other thing that's important to distinguish here is that when someone says, I've moved on from this, what they're probably really meaning is my conscious mind that I
Mhm.
identify with has moved on from this. Most people don't really know what's going on in their subconscious. And
Mm.
the subconscious represents about 95% of your
Mhm.
brain's power, and it runs your life through the autonomic nervous system and through experiences and habits and patterns. So if you had to think about walking across the room and all the muscles that would have to fire in all the right moments, you'd fall down like a toddler would, because it's that patterning and those programs that allow you to live the life of an adult, quite frankly, because 95% of it, you're not
Mhm.
required to think about it. And thank God. If you had
Right.
to think about shaking somebody's hand every time, you'd look like you had a
No.
neurological problem.
Or brushing your teeth or doing all the
Yes.
things. It's like a lot of people don't realize their subconscious is controlling, yeah, like you said, what, 95%? And they don't realize how powerful the subconscious mind is and how when you tap into that, you can change your life. That's why a lot of
Exactly.
people don't have change in their life because they're not changing the way that they're supposed to be changing. They think like putting a sticky note on the wall is going to change their life.
Correct. And here's one that I think that you will find interesting, and hopefully your listeners as well, and that is the concept of self-sabotage. This is a
Yes.
very popular phrase.
Mhm.
And my position on this is that there that's not that's not actually what's happening. It feels like it. Like I want to lose, 25 pounds. And then I eat an ice cream cone and then I have some cake and then I have some cookies. I have sabotaged myself. Well, on a certain level of awareness, yeah, that's true. That taking in all of these calories through sugar is going to make it impossible for you to lose that weight. But really what's happening is the subconscious mind is not happy with you losing weight. It's trying to protect you.
Mhm.
And so you have a disconnect between what your subconscious mind wants, feels, and believes, and what your conscious mind wants, feels, and believes. You've got this battle going on.
Mhm.
And imagine a human being like you or me riding on top of a massive elephant. You would be the conscious mind. The elephant would be the subconscious mind. And if you want the elephant to go right, but the elephant is afraid of going right, it's not going to go right. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter how much strength you have as a human, you cannot force the elephant to go that way. You've got to find some way to help the elephant feel comfortable with going that way. In other words, to help the elephant or subconscious mind feel comfortable with losing the weight. Because if
Mhm.
you were, let's say, for the sake of argument, there was sexual abuse earlier in one's life, and the subconscious mind has decided that it needs this barrier of extra flesh between you and the world, almost like armor, it's not going to let that
Mhm.
go.
And yeah.
If it believes that you were assaulted because you were beautiful, and it perceives that with the extra weight that potential attackers won't see it that way, then it's not going to let the weight go. If it
Right. I
feels
see.
like your friends and family are all heavy, and that
Mhm.
if you let the weight go, you're going to be ostracized by them, or you're going to
Mhm.
stand out, and it feels vulnerable for human beings to stand out, then it's not going to
Mhm.
do it. It's not going to let you do it.
I was speaking to this gentleman, his wife experienced sexual trauma when she was younger, they never had a good sex life, and it just came out, like, 20 years into their marriage, and he thought, "Oh,
Mhm.
she must be asexual or what's going on here?" And then she finally shared about her sexual trauma, and that unhealed sexual trauma was like the elephant, right? Like, it didn't feel safe with a man.
Yes.
Instead of her like 20 years ago, she could have gotten therapy, hypnosis. She could have addressed it, and she could have had an amazing sex life.
So that's a great example of, you, on some level of awareness,
Mhm.
you could say she was sabotaging her marriage.
Right. Mhm.
But on this other deeper level of awareness, what you just described, no one would call it that. That her subconscious, that has no concept of time, was trying to protect her, even though her husband was not a threat.
Mhm.
And that's where the subconscious has to be updated. It has to
Mhm.
understand that this threat is no longer a clear and present danger. It's
Mhm.
over. It's finished. It's done. And that her husband is this loving, maybe even protective force, so that she can have sex with him safely. Because
Mhm.
again, the autonomic nervous system is going to classify everything in your life, every single thought, every word, every experience, as either safe or not safe.
Mhm.
Period. End of
So,
story.
how would you use hypnosis to, let's say if you were this woman that we were just speaking about, how would you use hypnosis to help her?
Right? So we would use that fact that I've mentioned a few times in this interview so far, which is subconscious mind has no concept of time. We would use it to our advantage, which means if in hypnosis, let's say that she's 47 years old now, we would have the 47-year-old version of Sally in her mind go back in time and rescue the 6-year-old. I'm making that age up too. The
Mhm.
6-year-old who was sexually abused. We'd have her rescue her. And let's say
Mhm.
the 6-year-old, because it's different in every case. And so often, tragically, children who've been sexually abused take on like guilt and shame. They think it was their fault. And sometimes it's because the perpetrator will say things like that to them. Like, it's your fault. You did this. Or if you tell anyone, the parents are going to get divorced, or you're going to get thrown out of the house, or you're going to get in trouble. And that belief is still being held. Then we would reprocess that in the moment by having the 47-year-old rescue the 6-year-old. And this is also, incidentally, to tie back into the earlier part of the conversation, where you can bring in the divine, you can bring in Jesus, you can bring in Mary into that scene,
Mhm.
and have the little girl say, have them speak to her,
Mhm.
have them heal her heart, have them help her understand she is not at fault. She never was. And that's where I would be also using language while this person is in this state of hyper learning called hypnosis. that no child can ever be responsible for something an adult does to them. It's impossible.
Hmm. I love how you say hypnosis is a hyper state of learning.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
what
I've
it is.
never, right.
I know, because your exposure to it is the same as everybody else. It's through entertainment. I mean, even psychologists don't receive an education in hypnosis. They might get a half an hour where they're instructed that Sigmund Freud used it for a while and then he stopped using it. That's it. It's
Yeah.
this weird dichotomy where everybody is familiar with the term, everybody thinks they know what it means, but no one, except strange people like me, receive a
Hmm.
formal education in what it actually is.
On your website, it talks about burying something. What does buried actually look like in real life? Because a lot of high functioning people, a lot of my clients are high performing people, they don't feel broken. They feel successful, right? They feel like they're fine, but their relationships still don't work. And do you think it's because a lot of stuff is buried that they're not addressing, that they're not healing? And it's like they're carrying around this huge backpack full of rocks that just weighs them down, prevents them from having successful relationships. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with you entirely. And there our culture, when you say that person is successful, what we generally mean is either they're wealthy or they're famous or both.
Hmm.
We don't necessarily know what their mental health is like,
Hmm.
their emotional health, their spiritual health. We don't really know what their relationships are like, you know? And that's like being wealthy or financially successful or successful in business or famous. That's like a third of your life
Hmm.
because it leaves out the other big pieces. So if something is if you keep experiencing the same pain over and over again, you know something's off. It's like if your car is smoking as you drive down the road, it doesn't matter how expensive the car was, it's got an issue that's buried somewhere in the bowels of the engine that
Hmm.
needs to be addressed. And once
Hmm.
it is, it won't smoke anymore. You keep having, say, unsatisfying, unhappy relationships one after the other. Obviously, something's going on here,
Hmm.
you know? And and although I'm not trying, I would never excuse abusive behavior, for example, people cheating and so on. There's still an element from the other side, which is out of all the fish in the sea, this is the person this person chose. And it's not blame, it's just noticing that so that the filter through which they're attracted to people probably has something in there that's drawing the same type of person to them. Again,
Hmm.
as within, so without.
Hmm.
And I see it again as empowerment rather than victimhood, which would be it's all the blame is over there. Because
Hmm.
I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in transformation.
Yes, and transformation only comes when you can take complete responsibility for where you are in life, who you're with.
Yes. And my theory about relationships is that we spend way too much time blaming our partner for something that we either own a piece of or at least could influence the dynamic if we recognized it and changed it.
Right.
And when I work with individuals on relationships or I work with couples, I'm thinking in my head, 80% of this is what you brought to this and what you brought to this. 20% is communication strategies. How can we speak to each other in a way that is more respectful? That it's easier for the other person to feel heard, that when we get into a problem, we can resolve it much more
Hmm.
effectively.
Hmm.
Whereas I think most traditional couples counseling focuses largely on the dynamic between these two, rather than what did you bring to this and what did you bring to this?
Hmm.
And at a minimum, even if the people don't stay together, isn't it better if at least one of the partners emerges a healthier version of themselves than when they got into the relationship?
Hmm. That's what I say. I was like, I had to leave and just rescue myself. And now I'm a more whole, healthier version than I would have ever been staying in a toxic marriage,
Mhm.
trying to heal it, trying to, because you can't change somebody else. And so I
No.
realized, yeah, it's really hard. You have to pick your pain. You either stay in a loveless marriage for the sake of the children, which is hard, or you leave and cause divorce, which is also hard. But I have the best relationship with God I've ever had and myself. And I can't imagine what I would have been missing out on had I stayed in that type of environment. And what you
Mm.
said earlier made me think about also what I tell my clients is like we attract certain behaviors into our life. Like, and that's our responsibility, right? I used to say that I attract narcissists, but then I realized that kind of sounds victim. I would attract and tolerate and keep certain behaviors in my life because of how little I valued myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
Going back to the buried part, that I shared this in one of my other podcasts, but I was at this vineyard with one of my girlfriends down south in Texas, and she looked at me and she said, Anna, you're punishing yourself. And my eyes welled up with tears because I realized when the church had me get up on stage when I was pregnant with my first son as a single mother, that made me feel so cheap. And I didn't realize for 20 plus years, I was punishing myself. I thought I'm a bad person that my church would make me get up on stage. Everybody sins. And it's not like it's sin to be a single mom, but according to the church, you don't have a baby out of wedlock. That's not okay.
They did this as a humiliation ritual?
No, not humiliation really, but the pastor wanted everybody to know because I don't know why I went back to that church. I was born and raised in that church, basically, non-denominational Christian church. And he said, well, Anna, if you're going to come back to the church, I want you to get up and like repent in front of everybody so they know you're not like, he didn't say these words, but basically everyone knows you're not just like this girl sleeping around with people, but like you're recommitting your life back to Jesus. And I don't know why I did it. I did it, but I also got up on stage to share a message, which was my first time where I was able to share a message about what people like me need. What people like me need grace. And there's a lot of people in that church who judged me and who didn't want to help me.
Okay, so here this is fascinating. There's the parable of Jesus coming upon a group of men who are standing around a woman who's a
Mhm.
prostitute, and they've got rocks in their hands, and they're going to stone her to death. And his famous line is, "Let those among you without sin cast the first stone."
Mhm.
So my thinking about this is, if we followed that parable, who in that church was without sin?
Yeah.
And to single you
No one.
out, right, and to single you out could have been an opportunity for the pastor to say, she's no more a sinner than any one of you.
Mhm.
Any one of you believe that you have never committed a sin or you're not carrying your own stuff. You stand up and present yourself as higher and mightier than the rest of us.
So wild. And I heard that he did that to several other women after me, young girls who got pregnant. And so I didn't realize that that was a buried thought that
It's a
haunted me
trauma.
for years. It was a trauma. It affected my unborn child. He's now 22. I see the way that it affects him. And it's this generational pattern slash curse of feeling cheap. If she would have never said that to me, who knows how long it would have taken for me to realize what I was doing. But just the way that she looked at me, and she's just like, Anna, you're punishing yourself. And you think God is punishing you too. But once I was able to name that, do the work with it,
Yeah.
and let it go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I was healed.
Yeah.
That is the kind of work that we as people who are into personal growth and development
Yep.
need to
Yep.
constantly be open to.
Yes. Well, and just the fact that you can speak about it so eloquently and so calmly means that every time you talk about it, there's a way for your mind to integrate it all. When we
Mhm.
try to hide something or we suppress it, we actually give it more power. Even from a scientific
Mhm.
standpoint, people who, and I'm not saying that that would be a lie, but it's almost like that if you're pushing it off to the side, that your mind has to hold on to what really happened. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And as long as
Mhm.
it's holding it, it really does become like that buried, energetic force that's toxic.
Mhm.
And that's going to affect you in a variety of ways. We don't even know exactly how it'll affect you, but it's like having a room in your house where there's rancid meat in it or something, and you just
Mhm.
close the door and tape it up and spray Lysol on the edges of it. At
Mhm.
some point, we all know you've got to open the door. It's very unpleasant. And
Right.
go inside and pick that thing up and throw it in the trash and then start cleaning it. But when it's done, you have reclaimed a room in your house.
Mhm. Oh, I
Sense
know
of
how that affected me. That belief affected me. It because I felt cheap and bad and that I didn't deserve any good, I tolerated crappy behavior in my life from men. It affected how I chose men.
yes.
Affected the man that I married. I saw the red flags. He didn't treasure me. He didn't treat me poorly, but he didn't treasure me. And if I would have believed in myself and wasn't trying to punish myself or self-sabotage, I would have chosen better. And now I do. Now it's like my standards are so high, I won't even have lunch with someone if I sense certain things?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. That the belief that you have about yourself, we could also call that an identity.
Mhm.
And so many other decisions that are largely unconscious that we make are aligned with that identity belief that we have, like whether you deserve something or you don't.
Mhm.
And even if consciously you say, well, no, I deserve this, this, and this, if your subconscious mind isn't on board, then like
Mhm.
riding that elephant, the elephant's going to go the way it's
Mhm.
going to go.
So how would we know if the subconscious isn't on board? You would see patterns in people's lives
Well,
or
you would definitely see patterns. And then
Mhm.
I'll tell you how I work with my clients. So I come back to that earlier statement I made that your body is a feedback mechanism. That's how you know when you're happy. That's how you know when you're frightened. That's how you know when you're unhappy and when you're feeling pleasure. All of these things. You like someone, you don't like someone. How do you know? You feel it.
Mhm.
Your friend that you had dinner with or whatever in the south of Texas, and she looked at you and she said what she said. You knew she was right. How? Because you felt it.
Mhm.
Well, there was an intellectual recognition of the truth of that, but I'm going to say the big powerful part was it landed right here.
Oh, right
So
here, like yeah.
right. So there is something called an idiomotor tool. And there are chiropractors that use this. They call it muscle testing. The naturopathic physician that I found that helped me save my life used muscle testing as well. And that's basically asking the body for a yes or no. With
Mhm.
muscle testing,
Mhm.
it's muscle remains strong or muscle goes weak, yes or no.
Right.
I use a pendulum. A pendulum you can establish for a client, they hold it, not me, what their yes is and what their no is. Now, this is only an amplifier of what their body's already telling them because your body's going to have an opinion of everything you do. Everything you go to put in your mouth, your body's either saying yes or no, but we're so disconnected from our bodies.
Mhm.
So I have the client hold a pendulum and we establish for them what how the pendulum moves for a yes and how it moves for a no. And then I have them ask a question that they don't even say out loud. And I say it should produce a yes or a no. Like, am I 785 feet tall? That should produce a no. Is my body currently in the seated position? Like, your body should produce a yes for
Mhm.
that. And if they get an accurate answer with that, then we move forward.
Mhm.
And we could ask, for example, am I still holding a negative belief about being called up on stage at my church? Yes. Um, is that negative belief that I am a sinner, that I am unworthy of a loving, stable relationship? Say we get a yes to that too, just for the sake of argument.
Mhm.
Then we can say, on a scale of 0 to 10, how painful is that experience in the mind? And we can dial in the exact number. And let's say for you is a 10, 10 out of 10. Now, once we start working on it, we can have you come back to the pendulum and say, what is it now? Did we move the needle? And we know that we've got to keep working on that thing until we get it to a 0, a 1, or a 2. And once we've done that, we are done with that incident. We never have to come back to it again. And anytime your mind lights on it, it's not going to get triggered into
Mhm.
a physiological fight or flight response. It's not going to be running your life anymore in terms of what you deserve, the elephant, and what you believe you don't deserve. It won't be buried anymore. It'll be healed. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Yes. I spoke about this incident in one of my first podcasts last summer, and I couldn't talk about it without crying. But now I've talked about it so many times, and I really feel like I've been healed, and I know that I'm not cheap. I'm not bad. I know that I am worthy and a daughter of the Most High. But you're right. Just to confirm what you were saying, there was a time when I couldn't talk about it without crying.
And the pendulum is so fast
Mhm.
that you could, if you wanted to, you could just say, where is it now? Where's that incident now
Mhm.
in terms of its emotional impact on me? And hopefully you'd get an answer of 0, 1, or 2. If it was 10 before and now it's a 5, it may be that the emotions don't come up, but it's still exerting some influence. So if
Mhm.
I were working with you, I would want to make sure that that was done, 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 done. And I'd
Mhm.
also want to make sure that there's no other incident from, let's say, earlier that is also not completed. I'd like you to think about this and your viewers to think about this.
Okay.
When you get married, I'm sure you got married in a religious setting. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you took traditional marriage vows, you formed two contracts. You formed a contract recognized by the state of husband and wife, and you formed a
Yes.
second contract, which is a spiritual contract, which is usually till death do us part.
Right.
When people get divorced, they
Mhm.
dissolve one of the contracts, the state contract,
You're right.
the legal one.
Mhm.
Our culture doesn't really have a similar process to dissolve the religious or spiritual contract.
I've never thought of it that way before. So how do I dissolve it ASAP?
So the first
Can
thing
I?
you would do, the first thing I would do if we were working together is I would have you just ask with the pendulum, do I still subconsciously or spiritually have a contract of marriage with Joe? I'm just making the name up.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you got a no, we wouldn't have to do anything. If you got a yes, then we would want to dissolve that. And the way I do this is, again, with hypnosis, and I bring as much kindness and love as possible to this because in my experience, even tumultuous, painful relationships have aspects to them that are beautiful. So for example, your children are a
Mhm.
beautiful aspect of the relationship, even though there were other pieces that made it impossible to stay together. And so I have, and you could have Jesus standing there, right, in your mind,
Mhm.
and you invite your ex to come to this place. Now, this place in your mind might be a place you already find beautiful or whatever, a beach in your mind,
Mhm.
and you would tell him what are the things for which you are grateful, and that might just be your children,
Mhm.
and then in your mind you say, now it's time to let you go, to let you pursue your own path. And
Mhm.
then we would have him say similar things to you. It's very emotional.
Mhm.
So I have found this to be enormously helpful for clients when they can just go through this process in their consciousness to
Mhm.
dissolve a contract if it exists, because that's the first step.
Mhm.
Because this
I
can be an impediment to a future relationship. If on a subconscious
Yes.
level, the person might feel like they're cheating when they actually got a divorce, a state divorce, because they
Mhm.
didn't dissolve the spiritual or emotional commitment that they made.
Mhm. That reminds me of the soul ties that I learned about and I tell other people about. When you have sex with somebody, you're exchanging energy, right? And you
Yes.
create these soul ties. And so I created this list of men that I had created soul ties with, and I went by each one and broke that soul tie audibly and spiritually and denounced these soul ties. And I feel like that was a really amazing healing part of my journey. Um, One thing we were talking about buried stuff, I just wanted to touch on when as you were talking, I thought of these 3 incidences regarding my ex-husband, and I remember 3 things happened before we were married. They were total red flags. If any man did this to me today, I would never even give him 1 second of my time, but our first date was getting acai bowls, and So we went up to the counter and we ordered acai bowls and he paid for his and walked away. And I don't know why, like, that it just makes me feel so shitty, like and I remember having a moment standing there going, "What just happened?" But I was a single mom, and I think I just kind of felt like I was in survival mode. And then the next incident was we were making out on my couch, and he said, "I wanna marry you." That's how he proposed to me, "Let's go to the mall and buy a ring." So we went to the mall and he told me, "Go pick out your ring." And I didn't know his budget. I wanted a $600 ring. I bought a $300 ring. I guess that was the engagement. No, it was the wedding band. I never got an engagement ring. Like it was never even talked about. I tolerated that behavior. And then the third thing was he knew that I didn't want to have sex with him before we got married. And we both agreed as Christians we wanted to do things differently in this marriage. Well, he started talking about how he felt like I wasn't attracted to him and he started to guilt me because I didn't want to have sex with him. And so we had sex one time before we were married, and I remember going into the shower and just bawling. I feel emotional about it right now.
Yeah.
I just bawled. And obviously now that's like so that made
I
me feel
I
really shitty. That was what, 17 years ago?
yeah, I understand. Well, okay, so feel free to say no, but I'm wondering if you're willing to close your eyes and
Yes, let's do this.
so just close your eyes. It's very light,
Okay.
very simple. Just close your eyes and take yourself at your present age, because you have more experience than she did. 16 or 17 years more experience. That's a lot, right? You're like a you're like a big sister almost to her, almost like a mother. And you're a mother to your kids. So I'd like you to imagine that you at your present age, you just go right back to her in that shower. And you just put your arms around her and hold her and let her cry in your arms. Let her know how much you love her. Let her know how much you admire her, how much you value her, that you couldn't be where you are right now if she didn't keep going. And let her know that there is nothing wrong with her at all, that it's all an illusion by things that happened to her, called up on stage and these other things. There's nothing wrong with her. That she is a magnificent child of God, and that fact can never be changed no matter what. Tell me if you notice anything about her, the younger you, changing as you hold her, as you speak to her.
It's such a heavy thought of I'm literally in the shower with her and she's naked and
Yeah,
I'm just holding on to her and she feels so frail and vulnerable and broken and I'm just telling her like you're okay, like I've got you and I can feel her feeling just um what's the word? She knows that she's not bad. Like, she feels softer and like
beautiful.
relief. I think that's the word I'm thinking of is just like this
Lovely.
relief has just come over her.
Yes. And now I'd like you to imagine that the light of God is flowing in through the top of her head and filling her heart with the light of God. And that you, while this is happening, are saying to her, you are loved. You are magnificent. You are innocent. You are whole. You are complete. You deserve all the magnificence of God's creation, all the beauty, all the love, all the kindness. It all starts with you feeling those feelings on the inside. And everything that happens is just a step in your evolution, getting closer to God with each step, learning, understanding, becoming more compassionate for yourself and more compassionate for others. Let her know again that you are where you are now because of her courage,
Mhm.
because of her perseverance. That your children are where they are now because of her courage, her perseverance. How you
Back,
feeling?
back on the air. My goodness. I I feel so much better. I've never done that before where I've gone back. It was so real. I just was crouched over with her, just holding onto her with the shower running, and just she was just so little. And it's a really weird, different, weird perspective of thinking I'm 48. I was 29. That's kind of a big gap, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I do feel like when you said I'm the older big sister, I feel like, wow, I'm not even the same person I was 6 months ago. I've changed so much in 6 months, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And to think of me going back to when I'm 29, how little I knew, how broken I was, how in pain, how lost, how insecure and fearful, and had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to survive with this baby. Thank you for doing that. I
Of
hope
course.
whoever's listening, like you were following along and maybe doing it yourself, like in your own, or make some time after this to go and sit with the thing that keeps haunting you.
And so when the emotions started to overcome you, which,
Yeah.
first of all, emotions are beautiful. They are
Mhm.
perhaps the most human aspect of us. And we do live in a culture where we've been taught to suppress them. There, don't cry,
Mhm. Yes.
right? That we
Yeah.
live in a culture that is uncomfortable with emotion. And yet, emotion is so intrinsic to our experience as a human being. It also was given to us by God. And
Mhm.
my belief is that we should allow ourselves to freely express them, to allow yourself to have that experience. And as soon as you move into an emotional state, I know by definition, in that moment, you are in hypnosis. That's where you are. And that's why I didn't
Really?
have to.
Wait, I was
Yeah,
just hypnotized?
you all did it yourself based on our conversation.
Right. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow, that's
So,
cool.
and all it means technically is that part of your brain goes dark that was formerly lit up, and another part of your brain that was dark lights
Yeah.
up. And it means you move into a state of hyper learning. And the whatever we do is going to go deep into that subconscious mind. That's
Mhm.
where transformation happens. It doesn't happen in the conscious mind. It happens in the
Mhm.
subconscious mind. Thank you for being open to that. And that's why when you say it felt so real, because your subconscious mind has no concept of time, which incidentally
Mhm.
is the quantum reality of time. That's a
Mhm.
construct. And our
Mhm.
subconscious mind reflects that. So part of you, the 95%, the elephant part, really was there with her,
Mhm.
really did experience this transformation with her. And that the transformation really did occur at that level of your consciousness.
It's wild to think of that 29-year-old version of me has been sitting in the shower sobbing
Yes.
for 17
Yes.
years.
Yes.
And I just walked in there and hugged her and said, "It's okay. You can stop now. Like you're okay. Don't worry. Look how
And
far we've come."
yes, look how far we've come. I
Yeah.
have survived. I have thrived.
Mm.
And you were integral to this
Mhm.
because you didn't give up. You kept
Right.
going. That takes courage. That takes love to be able to do that. And and when she's able to recognize that, aka you're able to recognize that at that
Mhm.
level of consciousness, it's like, yeah, I did. I kept going.
Mhm.
And you're a magnificent child of God. That can never be taken away, no matter
Right.
what happens.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do to change the fact that your children are your children.
Mhm.
And I'm going to say, based on the conversations we've had, that there's nothing your children could do that would make you not love them anymore.
Mhm.
I believe that's how it is with God. There's nothing that
Mhm.
we might be disappointed in ourselves. We might feel like we need to atone
Yeah.
for what we did, whatever it is. But the fact that we are a child of God cannot be changed.
Mhm. That can
And
never be
because,
taken from us.
yes, and because we're created in God's image, we
Yeah.
have a magnificence inside of us too.
I just wanna encourage anyone who's listening to this to really make some time this week to do what we just did. I mean, even if you just do it by yourself and let that thing come to the surface and then do what we did, like go back and talk to that person. It's very healing and refreshing. For someone listening who's skeptical or even scared of going back into painful memories, how do you make that process safe and not overwhelming? I think what you just did is a great example. I didn't think that we were going to actually do this in real time.
Either. We all have the tools, we all have the capability inside of us. It's a
Mhm.
built-in feature. Just like our physical system through our liver and through our blood has an ability to discharge and get rid of toxins.
Mhm.
We have this ability on an emotional, psychological, spiritual level, but we have to walk down that road. We can't just expect that time is going to do it automatically.
This next question is you think you've moved on, but what you buried is still running your life. Like what you were literally just saying was my next question. It's funny because I literally had this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who has sleep apnea. I think this is a perfect example for anybody who's listening. Don't think that that trauma that you buried is any less real or like a physical ailment, right? So when you have sleep apnea, it strains your heart, and these people tend to be emotionally reactive, have low patience, irritable, and exhausted. And so as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, this is a physical problem that has physical results. But your trauma that you've buried is no less a physical trauma with physical results. Like you just said, if you bury something, it's going to affect the people that you choose and accept and tolerate into your life. That's the physical result, just like what happened in my life. When I felt cheap and I got up on the stage, I accepted shitty men into my life. And so that's how it affects you. And it's like you're dragging along this baggage. And sometimes people even expect others to sort through their baggage and get rid of it and heal it, but only you can do the work.
Yeah.
So I guess my thought is just don't think that just because you can't see it, don't think that it's any less important to go back into your past and dig up those traumas and heal yourself so that you can have better relationships.
Yeah, and I think if you really want to simplify it, it's
Yeah.
the how essential it is to get to the root cause or
Mhm.
causes of what's going on with you.
Mhm.
Because sleep apnea, yeah, it could have a psycho emotional component. It could also be that the person is overweight. Like there could be, even 15 pounds of extra weight that they're carrying around could be part of it. It could have
Mhm.
something to do with their diet or their habits.
Mhm.
That physics says a body in motion tends to stay in motion.
Mhm.
And in our culture, it's so fast paced all the time.
Mhm.
And the subconscious can't distinguish between something that our conscious mind says is a real, clear, and present danger or something that says it's fiction. So
Mhm.
yeah, your friend who's got the sleep apnea ideally would be looking at all these different things: weight, diet, sleep, old trauma. Like God knows
Right.
what they're even dreaming about in their mind, and
Right.
clean it all up, I would say,
Mhm.
and then see what happens.
I do want to go back to one more thing before we end. We talked about success earlier, and it was a thought that I never really thought about, but I think it's so important. People do say that other people are successful if they have money or fame, basically. But I thought if you have crappy relationships, you're either dismissive, avoidant, or anxious, preoccupied, how could you call yourself successful? That's failing to me. And a lot of my clients are successful in business because they make a lot of money, but they're failing in their love lives. Is that success? I think people should change it and don't say you're successful anymore. Say you're wealthy or famous. And the last thing I want to say, our lives consist of 7 core pillars: physical, mental and emotional, spiritual, sexual, professional, financial, and relational. And I always teach about the relational last because I feel like once you master these first 6 pillars about your purpose in life and how you manage your money, are you a wise steward, and how you work out, your health and nutrition, your mental and emotional regulation, etc. Once you master these first 6 pillars, you can have good relationships. But if you're failing in some of these pillars, would you really consider that you're successful when you're failing in your diet and your sleep and you don't forgive people and you hate your parents or whatever it is? It's just like a little mindset shift I wanted to touch on about you're not really successful if you're failing in your
No, I don't
life,
think so.
right?
No, I don't think so. And I think the most, I mean, you probably agree with me. I think the most important thing in our lives is if you have children, their health and how balanced they are.
Yeah.
You know, and if your children are messed up, but you have a lot of money, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
To your point, if you have a lot of money, but you have a string of failed relationships and lots of anger and so on, what good is it? Wealth comes in different forms. Like
Right.
your physical health is a form of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of time
Yeah.
that you have to spend with loved ones is a form of wealth. The happiness of your family is a form of wealth.
Yeah.
And what good is a lot of money if you're sick and you're going to die in,
Mm-hmm.
6 months, age of 45, because you stressed yourself out so much by making all that money? I'm not trying to diminish money. I'm not trying to diminish fame,
Right.
but to put it into context with balance.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, is there anything else that you want to add before we leave?
You're not broken, no matter what's going on with you.
Mhm.
It's really just you're carrying pain with you from stuff that happened in the past. And
Mhm.
there are ways to identify and release that pain. And when you do, you will feel lighter. You will be more of you.
Well, thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And so where can people find you?
Website, which is blueskyhypnosis.com, or they can go to my YouTube channel where I've got like 270 pieces of content on there called Blue Sky Hypnosis as well.
And you're on social media?
Yeah, Instagram, the Peter McLaughlin, and what else? LinkedIn and X.
Okay. Well, we'll put that in the show notes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
anybody who is curious about hypnosis, reach out to Peter. He'll take good care of you. And thank you so much for being on my show and adding so much value. I mean, I'm really excited about this episode. And it was very emotional and healing and productive and just not what I expected. I didn't expect to experience healing myself on this episode.
And I didn't either, but I'm so glad that
Yeah.
you were able and willing to roll with it. That's what I think is so great about having two human beings talking to each other, is that there's a chemistry, there's a magic that happens, that you
Mhm.
don't really know where it's going to go. And I feel like that's the part of doing these podcasts that I really appreciate the most, rather than something that's
Mhm.
sort of scripted.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And anyone who's listening, make sure you go get some wind in your hair this week. Have some fun, get some healing, get some wind in your hair. And I'll see you next week.